Good morning, Rechavia and Nachlaot in Yerushalayim. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our daily Tanya class between 9:30 and 10 o'clock right here at Jerusalem time. And it is an honor to be able to learn with you together Tanya. And we're in the middle of Tanya Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41. Yesterday we discussed at great length the subject of Yichud of the Shekhinah, the unification that we accomplish through our Torah and mitzvot that we do right here in this world. We accomplish tremendous yichudim, unifications up above, and there are many different levels of light which shine to the world as an outcome of this special of every mitzvah that we do, of the yichudim, of the unifications that we make. And that is what it says. We say in the morning before Baruch Shamar in the Shacharit, L'shem yichud kudsha b'richu ushchintei, for the sake of the unification of Hashem and His Shekhinah, because the ultimate purpose is that the Shekhinah should rest, so to speak, in this world. Let's see the words inside. I don't have the regular Tanya with me, so hopefully you remember. If I'm not mistaken, it's page 114 in the regular Hebrew text. And let's read along. Lachen. It's within the last 10 lines before the bottom of the page. It's pretty much around the middle of the page, if I remember correctly. Lachen, therefore, yitkaven, a person should have in mind, liyached, to unify himself with Hashem, uledavka bo yitbarach, and to cleave unto Him, unto Hashem, blessed be He. Makor nafshoha elokit, the source of his own soul, umakor nafshot kol Yisrael, and the source of all souls. In other words, every single Jew has 5 levels to the neshama. Let's go through them. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. Nefesh, the free translation is soul. That's Nefesh. Ruach is spirit. Neshama is also soul. Chaya is life. And Yechida is unification. Generally speaking, the 3 levels of the neshama, the 3 lower levels, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, are those levels which are mitlabesh, enclose themselves within the human being down here in the physical world. The higher 2 levels of chaya and yechida, chaya is life and yechida is unification. Those are the levels which remain above. So in a few weeks we're going to learn in Pirkei Avot that it says b'chol yom vayom, every single day, bat kol yotzet mehar chorev, there is a heavenly voice which calls out from Har Chorev, which is really Har Sinai, and says, Oy lahem labriot me'albona shel Torah. Woe to those creations from the shame of the Torah. In other words, woe to those who do not learn the Torah and do not fulfill the Torah. And it says that it's because of this heavenly voice that inspires the individual down here in this world to reconnect to the Torah. You know, sometimes a person has this automatic inspiration. All of a sudden a person says, wow, you know what? I have this real urge to come closer to Hashem. And then a person makes one step, a baby step, or several steps towards coming closer to Hashem. So the question is, who hears this heavenly voice? We're simple people. We're here in this world, and we're not spiritual that we can hear heavenly voices that talk to our neshama. So what is the point of having this heavenly voice? B'chol yom vayom, bat kol yotzet. This heavenly voice comes and calls out to awaken us to do tshuva. What's the point of it? We don't hear it anyways. The answer is that we said before that the 3 lower parts of our neshama, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, are down here in this world enclosed in our bodies. And then the higher two levels of Chaya and Yechida, they remain above. So this heavenly voice is heard by the two levels, the two higher levels of Chaya and Yechida, which remain above. Do we hear it with our physical ears? Probably not. Usually not. Although it can happen, but usually not. Nevertheless, the two levels of the neshama above, Chaya and Yechida, do hear the bat kol, and there is a direct connection, a direct link between the higher level of the neshama and the lower level of the neshama, which is down here. And then we are down here, we become inspired, and we are awakened to come back to Hashem. Just one moment, please. Thank you. Okay, so we established that there's a lower level of the neshama, which are divided into three parts, and the higher level of the neshama, which are divided into two parts, Chaya and Yechida. That's a great example for what the Alter Rebbe says, Makor nafsho elokit, umakor nafshot kol Yisrael. You see, there is the source of our own neshama, the way it is on high, and those are Chaya, and more specifically, it's a level of Yechida. Yechida means literally unification, that our neshama is literally unified with a strong bond with Hashem, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, our job is to try to connect to this makor. It's hard because we're human beings. We don't really know the way, the route, how to attach ourselves and connect ourselves to the source of our neshamas. But hopefully, when we have the kavanah, while doing each mitzvah, before doing each mitzvah, l'shem yichud kudsha b'richu u'shchinte, b'shem liyachda b'shem kol Yisrael, that's what we're accomplishing. We are hopefully succeeding to elevate ourselves and elevate our neshamas to connect in an obvious way with the source above. And that's not enough. We also need to connect umakor nafshot kol Yisrael, also the source of all of the neshamot of Am Yisrael. You know, there's a concept which is called Knesset Yisrael. I'm not talking about the Knesset, the Israeli government. I'm talking about the Knesset Yisrael above. What does Knesset mean? Knesset literally means the gathering, the kenes. And Knesset Yisrael means that all of our souls have a common denominator. And we, above, in the source of our neshamas, we are all one unit. That's called Knesset Yisrael. Usually in Kabbalah, we refer Knesset Yisrael in the level of Malchut, the lowest level of Atzilut, kingship. And in that level, that's where is the Kisei, the holy throne of Hashem. And right beneath the throne of Hashem, that's where all of our neshamas are united. This is what we discussed earlier, about a month ago, in chapter Lamed Bet, chapter 32, that when we have Ahavat Yisrael, our challenge is to be able to connect to another Jew, not necessarily with what we see externally, rather to connect as our source. When we do that, then we're really connecting in a very unified way. Because the way we are in our source, the Knesset Yisrael, it's impossible to differentiate between one Jew and another Jew. Just like children from parents. Before the children are born, the children are in the mind of the parents. Physically, literally. Do you think it's possible to separate between and to identify each child before the children are born? Maybe Hashem can, but a human being cannot. It's not even possible to identify the physical dimensions of the child before the child is born and before the child is conceived. How much more so that it's impossible for a human being to separate and differentiate between one child and another. But that doesn't change the fact. All children are unified in the mind of the parent even before the child is conceived. And therefore, that's how we have to try. Hashem is our Father. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. We are all children of Hashem. And therefore, our challenge is to be able to ascend above all the little nitty-gritty which we discuss between each other. And sometimes some tension that can be formed between two human beings. That tension can only be if we look at each other the way we are down here. And it's possible, Khalila, for one to offend another. But if we look at ourselves the way we are unified as one in Knesset Yisrael, unified in one as one unit, then that's a whole other ballgame. Then it's impossible to differentiate between us. And our mission is to be able to act down here with Ahavat Yisrael, and in our scenario over here to have the kavanah, lachen yitkaven, yichud shel mitzvot, the unification of the mitzvot, to ascend and connect ourselves to Hashem the way we are above, the way our neshama is above, the way the source of our neshama is connected to the source, which is the exact same source of all of the neshamot of all of Am Yisrael. Let's continue in the text. The source of our neshamot, shehu ruach pivit barach. This source of the godly soul and the souls of our each and every one of our godly souls and the souls of all of Am Yisrael collectively is the spirit of the mouth, so to speak, of Hashem. That refers to obviously what it says in the first parsha in the Torah, Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim, that Hashem, so to speak, configuratively, blew out of his holy mouth, not physically obviously, into the nostrils of Adam HaRishon, a neshama. What is this ruach piv? What is this spirit of the mouth? The breath? What is the breath of Hashem? Hanikra b'shem Shechina. Now we're getting back to what we explained yesterday. This is called the level of Shechina. This is called the level of Shechina, the divine presence, which Hashem, the presence of Hashem is that which Hashem expresses, so to speak. Just like when we speak down here, human beings, when we speak, it's air which comes out of our mouths. So too, when we talk about Hashem's quote-unquote speech, that is something which is a divine inspiration, which sort of comes quote-unquote out of Hashem in order to bring Kedusha to the world and other aspects, other areas which may not obviously seem holy. Why is it called Shekhinah? Let's continue in the text. Al Shem Sheshochenet, because this divine inspiration, this divine presence rests, Umitla Beshet, and encloses itself, Toch Kol Almin, within all worlds, Lahachayotan, to give it life, Ulakaiman, and to sustain them. That's the purpose of the Shekhinah, as we explained yesterday. The main purpose of the Shekhinah is not just to remain above in Malchut of Atzilut and to accomplish great spiritual things. That's also true, and that's also important. But the primary purpose of the Shekhinah is to be able to be Shochenet Umitlabeshet, to be totally to rest and to enclose itself within this world to bring Kedusha. Vehi hamashpat bo koach hadibur hazeh, and this is what gives it the special koach of dibur, shemitaber b'divrei Torah. So when we learn words of Torah, we are connecting to the Shekhinah, and we are bringing pure godliness right here into this world. Oh, that's if you speak words of Torah. Another way that the Shekhinah can express itself in this world, oh, koach hamasa hazeh, or the energy of this deed, la'asot mitzvah zu, to do this mitzvah. When we talk about speech and action, they're both something which is some type of action. There are three clothes, levushim, in which we express ourselves and we are able to act. Machshava, speech. Machshava, thought. Dibur, speech. And Ma'aseh, deed. Machshava is something that we always do. Mishotetet tamid. We're always thinking. So when we're thinking about a certain concept, we don't consciously realize, okay, now I'm starting to think about this concept. Because we're always thinking. Even if you think you're daydreaming, you're still thinking. You're looking to the sky, you're taking a suntan, you're thinking about the colors of the clouds, or you're counting the tiles on the floor, or you're doing something, counting the fence panels. Whatever you're doing, you're looking around, the color and the leaves that are moving. Whatever you're doing, we're always thinking. Fact. That's a fact. We're always thinking. Then to speak, when it comes to speech, not necessarily do we always speak. There are some people that speak a lot, and some people that even speak to themselves. But when you speak, you're starting to express yourself. Before you began to speak, you were silent. And so the moment that you begin to speak, you're doing something, you're accomplishing something, as opposed to beforehand that you were silent. Action is much easier to understand, that it's an accomplishment, it's a deed. You're doing something. You're building a home. You're taking a sefer to learn Torah. You're giving tzedakah. You're doing a specific mitzvah, a physical, materialistic act. So the Alter Rebbe says over here that this Shekhinah, which the purpose is to come into the world and to influence the world, to elevate the materialistic world, every time we speak, we say one word of Torah, that's what we're doing. We're connecting to the Shekhinah. We're doing this yichud. L'shem yichud kutsha b'richu u'shchinte. We are accomplishing that this should be this yichud above, this strong bond, unification above, which will give us koach, will inspire us to speak more words of Torah, to do more mitzvahs. Because that's the purpose of the Shekhinah, in order to bring divine inspiration into this physical, materialistic world. As the Alter Rebbe continues, the yichud zeh, and this unification, hu al yidei hamshachat or ein sof baruch hu lamata. This unification between us and our source, the source of our neshamas above, this draws down the infinite light. You heard correctly. Or ein sof baruch hu. The infinite light of Hashem, blessed be He, lamata, down here. Al yidei esek haTorah v'mitzvot, through learning Torah in a way that it's part of our lives. The hamitzvot and the mitzvot. Shehu melubash bahen, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is enclosed within them. So when we do a mitzvah, we might think, big deal, I just wrapped the tefillin, I just lit the Shabbos candles, I just blew the shofar or heard the shofar, just a physical act, big deal. No. Hashem, in His infinite wisdom and in His infinite presence, finds Himself in every single materialistic mitzvah. When we do a mitzvah, we're accomplishing so much. We are connecting to the essence of Hashem. In fact, it says in Chassidus and in Kabbalah that the Ma'or, the luminary, not just the light of Hashem, the Ma'or finds himself right here in this world. So there are many levels of godliness and many worlds and many sfirot. All of those, all of the above, are some type of light, some type of shine from Hashem. But the Ma'or, not the Or, the Ma'or, we might not have so much revelation down here in this world. But the Ma'or, the source of the light, the luminary, finds itself right here in this world. And the proof is that people say so often, Baruch Hashem, how you doing? Baruch Hashem. When are you going to do this? Bezrat Hashem, Baruch Hashem. People are, it's the concept of connection to Hashem is so much at the tip of our tongues that that's a proof that even though we might not see Hashem's presence in this world physically, but the presence of the Ma'or is certainly right here. And therefore, not only is it also in the Torah that we learn Hashem's presence and also in the mitzvot, but primarily in the mitzvot that we do. Yes, You heard correctly. In the physical mitzvah that we do, we capture Hashem. There's no way with all of our thoughts and greatest kavanas that we can ever connect to the essence of Hashem, to touch the essence of Hashem. But when we do a physical mitzvah, that accomplishes a great yichud. Obviously, it's important to have the kavana and the say l'shem yichud and to prepare oneself. No question. I'm not in any way, shape, or form belittling, undermining kavana. But let's remember the basics. Let's remember the foundation. Let's remember the underlining message that specifically when we do a physical mitzvot, b'ma'aseh, with deed, then we reach Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu Lamata. We draw down through this yichud, we draw down the essence of Hashem. Let's continue. V'yitkaven. And we should have in mind, Lahamshich Oro Yitbarach, to draw down the great light of Hashem, Al Makor Nafsho, onto the source of the person's nefesh, the Nafshot Kol Yisrael, and the source of the souls of all of Am Yisrael, as we explained earlier today. Liachdan, to bring them together, they should be unified with Hashem's light. As is explained later on, Pirush Yichud Zeh Ba'arichut. The explanation of this unification at great length, Ayin Sham, look later on in the Tanya. Now we're getting back to summarize what we started to explain yesterday. That little line and a half that we say before the Baruch Shamar. V'zehu pirush l'shem yichud kudsha b'richu u'shchinte b'shem kol Yisrael. That before in the beginning of the day, in the onset of the day before we start davening, before the mitzvah of tefillah, that may this be a yichud, a unification of kudsha b'richu u'shchinte, of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, to be drawn down here, b'shem kol Yisrael. B'shem kol Yisrael, in the name of all of Am Yisrael, alludes to the fact that we want that the Shekhinah should come down and should inspire the source not only of our own souls, but all the souls of Am Yisrael together. Let's just finish off with a Haggah, with a note, and then Bezrat Hashem afterwards we'll continue. And so the Alter Rebbe says, the Gam al Yidei Zeh. First, let me just explain in short what the Alter Rebbe is going to. Usually, when it comes to not a footnote, it's just a note. You'll see the Haggah if you have the Tanya open in front of you. Towards the bottom of the page, I believe it's 114 in the regular Tanya, and usually these are very, very deep Kabbalistic concepts. And so the concept that we're going to say now in very short is called Hamtakat Dinim. We have Hashem has Gvura. The Gvura is the second level of the emotions of Hashem, and Dinim, judgment, is a natural outcome of Gevura. When one has Gevura, severity, then that can bring to judgment. In the Kabbalah, there are 5 levels of Gevura. So the Kabbalah discusses the subject of Hamtakata Dinim. To take the Dinim, to take these judgments, the real hardcore stringencies, and to make them sweet, to turn them into chesed. There's this concept in Kabbalah. Usually when we unify, we talked about yichud, unifications. We talk about unifying different levels of kedusha. We alluded just to 2 of them yesterday, but there are many levels of yichud. For example, chesed and gevura, we can actually accomplish to be mamtik dinim, to sweeten the dinim. Let me give you 2 quick examples. One example is of Pesach. We just had the matzah. And on the first night of Pesach during the Seder, we broke the middle matzah. We take the larger part, we break it into 5 parts, as I mentioned in the model Seder, and we hide that as an afikoman, and then we eat it for the afikoman towards the end of the Seder, right before benching. So according to Kabbalah, the middle matzah is compared to Levi. The top is Kohen, the middle is Levi, the bottom is Yisrael. So Levi, according to Kabbalah, is Gevura. Kohen is Chesed, and Levi is Gevura. So we take the 5 pieces of the matzah, we break them, in other words, into 5, and by eating them and by elevating them, and they become part of the Seder, we are mamtik the din. We sweeten the din, that the din should not be harsh and severe, God forbid, rather it should be sweet. And therefore, we change over the severity of din into sweet. Another quick example on Sukkot. On the 7th day of Sukkot is Hoshana Rabbah. We take 5 willow branches that are bound together, and we slap them on the ground. And according to Kabbalah, that's the idea of Hamtakata Dinim. We say it in the Hiratzon. That if there's any judgment, God forbid, that Hashem has planned during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so towards the end of Sukkot, we bang the willows, the Hoshanot, on the ground, and by banging them, we get rid of the din, and we make them sweet. So let's get back to the text. It's very short over here. The Gamal Yidezeh, through the fact that we accomplish this yichud, unification, Yitmatku Gamken Hagvurot B'chasadim Memela. Naturally, Mamela, the Gevurot, the dinim and the strength and the severity, the stringency of Hashem's, sometimes of Hashem's punishment, all of a sudden becomes sweet. Once we have the hitkalut hamidot, the inclusiveness of all midot one in another in tikkun, that's tikkun olam, then we can create a new scenario that the gevura is not a stringent gevura, rather a sweet gevura, if you will. Al yidei gilui ratzon elyon baruch hu, through the revelation of the exalted will of Hashem. Hamidgaleh lemala b'taruta dilatata, which is revealed above through our awakening, the awakening down here. So by us doing a basic mitzvah, even a simple, small mitzvah, quote unquote, we can bring about, there should be a great hitorut, a great awakening above. Hu giluyav lamata, and that means that it becomes revealed down below. Be'esek hatorah mitzvah, with learning Torah and observing the mitzvot. Shehein ritzono yitbarach, that they are the will of Hashem. And here are a couple of sources. U'kumosha katuv be'idra rabbah, as it says in the Zohar, part of the Zohar is called Idra Rabbah, or the Mishnat Chasidim Mesechet Arach Anpin Perek Dalid. What does it say over there? Here's a quote: Shetaryag mitzvot haTorah nimshachot mechivartat Arach Anpin. That the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah are drawn down from the quote-unquote white, clean part of Arach Anpin, which is the level of Ratzon, above the 10 levels of the Sfirot. Shehu Ratzon Ha'elyon, this is the higher will of Hashem, Makora Chasadim, this is the source of all the chesed. So in other words, to summarize what we learned today, we continue to learn about the concept of Yichud.